2020-21 graduates are truly special people. They took a chance registering for a leadership program in the throes of a pandemic, knowing that their experience would be adapted, but not knowing exactly how. Look around. Here we are, among community, among friends. Most of us are maskless, and we're here to celebrate leadership and service. It's just great to see your faces. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for your generous sponsorships, and thank you for your ongoing support. So let's get ready for our keynote speaker. He is a thought leader in business and servant leadership. He is an award-winning, best-selling author of 4 books. He founded Intent Consulting and formerly served as general manager of GSK and Allergen. Omar Harris has more than 20 years of executive-level experience in global pharmaceuticals and is a team builder. He's worked on 4 continents for Pfizer, Merck, Sharice, and more. As a Gallup certified strengths coach, motivational speaker, and entrepreneur, Omar Harris is passionate about leading teams, high performance, and inspiring the future leaders of today and tomorrow to adopt the servant leadership mindset and stop toxic leadership behaviors. His work has been featured on CNN, HLN Headline News, Living Corporate Podcast, the Black News Channel, and more. Omar is a native Pennsylvania who currently lives in North Carolina. He speaks 5 languages, plays 7 instruments, and started his first company at the age of 7. In his book, The Servant Leaders Manifesto, currently in use in our ACES program, Omar states, servant leaders wield influence like Jedi wield the Force. In his upcoming book, Be a Jedi Leader, Not a Boss, Omar cleverly uses Jedi as an acronym for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I really wish I would have thought of that acronym first. We couldn't resist a good theme here today. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Omar Harris.
This is cool. Good afternoon. It's so nice to be back in my home state of Pennsylvania. I was born in Pittsburgh. I'm a lifelong Steelers fan. Hopefully that's a Steelers fan in the house. But I haven't been back home in a long while due to COVID, so it's really great to be here. I want to thank Una and everyone at Leadership Harrisburg Area for inviting me here. And I want to give one more round of applause to all the graduates of the program this year, please. One more round of applause for yourselves. Now, one of the things I like to do at the beginning of my talks is tell myself a mantra. And I hope that you all would join with me in this mantra today as a bit of a call and response. So when I ask you to repeat after me, will you do so? All right. So repeat after me. It's not about me. That was pretty good. Some of you are still sleeping. Let's try again. It's not about me. All right. And one more time with feeling. It's not about me. That's wonderful. That's great. Now, I'm sure when you all saw the title of this talk, you had 2 thoughts in mind. First, what the heck is Jedi leadership? And second, will Omar come dressed in an Obi-Wan Kenobi cosplay? Well, I'm sorry to disappoint on the second point, but I'm very happy to oblige you on the first. When I say Jedi leadership and leaders, I'm referring to leaders who embrace the causes of social justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in how they lead and show up for their people. This brand of leadership is needed now more than ever before as corporations are beginning to lean into the space of stakeholder capitalism, which moves beyond the profit motive to add value to a broader group of stakeholders, employees, communities, customers, and the environment, in addition to shareholders. These new expectations are game changers for people who think they can simply boss their way to success. And we servant leaders have a unique opportunity in this brave new world to create more value, but also be more valuable than ever before. And I want to show you how in this talk. Now, I'd like to tell you a story about an inspirational leader, someone who literally embodies Jedi leadership. And I'm talking, of course, about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Did you know that MLK Jr. was almost assassinated in 1958 at a book signing event when a woman stabbed him in his chest and nearly pierced his heart? As he recovered in the hospital, he received letters from the president, the vice president, and the governor of New York. But he didn't remember anything that was in those letters. But there was one letter from a 9th grade girl who happened to be white from White Plains, New York, that really struck with him. Because she said she was so happy that he didn't sneeze while he was on the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Because the papers had stated, had he sneezed, the knife would have slipped into his aorta and ended his life. Now, MLK Jr. relates this story in the last speech he ever gave on April 3rd, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, a few days before he was assassinated, in the speech entitled, "I've Been to the Mountaintop." And in the speech, he tells the story, and he says he's also really happy he didn't sneeze, because if he had, he would have missed all the progress from people rising up to fight against the toxic forces of darkness. And because he didn't die, he survived to see the promised land. He got to climb the mountaintop and report back that he did not fear death because he was certain that freedom would be achieved due to the collective efforts of everyone in the movement. He knew that with or without him, freedom was guaranteed because the movement was bigger than him. So much to learn from his example, right? Well, the good news for us is that we don't have to aspire to MLK levels of influence to become Jedi leaders. We simply have to ask and answer 3 questions for ourselves. And these 3 questions are, why do I serve? Second question is, how do I leave a positive legacy? And lastly, what do I really care enough about to give my all? We'll walk through each question in turn during this talk, and hopefully by the end, you'll understand how to go from servant leadership to Jedi leadership, and more importantly, why it matters. So let's start with why we serve. For without purpose, there can be no clear action. For some people, finding purpose is a lifelong pursuit, but for others, it's something they find early on in life. But purpose doesn't have to be something we accidentally stumble upon in our life journeys. It can be manifested. There's a formula for purpose, and I will share with you in a few seconds. Take climate activist Greta Thunberg, for example, who started a global movement in 2018 simply by skipping school. Back in August 2018, instead of attending high school, she protested in front of the Swedish parliament, stating that she would not return to school until something was done about climate change. Imagine a 16-year-old girl, barely 5 foot tall, sparking a revolution and the largest climate protest in the world. 4 million people all around the world united in their call for governments and corporations to change their ways. When she was just 11 years old, she fell into a deep depression after a primary school teacher showed them a video of the impacts of climate inaction. Dying polar bears going extinct, extreme weather conditions, and flooding. She stopped eating and talking and was nearly hospitalized for malnutrition. But the source of her depression was also the source of her greatest strength. Her Asperger's syndrome diagnosis helps her see the world in purely black and white. The danger was clear and imminent, and not enough was being done about it. It was as simple as that. So she decided to take one small action that ignited a revolution. Since her strike, she's traveled the world calling out the adults of the world and corporations of the world for their inaction in her direct, flat, honest, and urgent tone. And in 2019, for her activism, she was named the Time Magazine Person of the Year. Greta Thunberg is the embodiment of purpose in action. Now, fortunately, we don't have to fall into a deep depression in order to find our purpose. We simply need to find our ikigai, which is the Japanese term for purpose. Iki means to live, and gai translate as reason. So, reason to live, or purpose. Ikigai can be determined by answering 4 key questions. What am I most passionate about? What are my strengths? What can I be paid for? And what does the world need from me? When combined, this becomes, what will be the positive impact on the world of me being compensated for leveraging my strengths in pursuit of my wild passion? It's a very powerful statement to help you define your purpose. And how powerful is this pursuit of purpose? Well, did you know in Okinawa, Japan, there is the highest concentration of people who've lived to be 100 years or older, centenarians? The secret, they say, they boil it down to ikigai. In Okinawa, there isn't even a word for retirement. All they say is ikigai, which really literally means reason for getting up in the morning. The implications are clear. Living one's purpose is the battery in your back, fueling your life. So let's see how Greta Thunberg's ikigai measures up. She's clearly passionate about diminishing the impacts of human life on the climate. She possesses a unique ability to filter out the noise and a lack of fear of communicating her truth while remaining unaffected by her own burgeoning fame. She has received significant compensation for speaking her truth about climate change around the world, but she realizes that the world needs more than words to combat climate inaction. And so she's donated the vast majority of her compensation to organizations doing good work in the space of climate change.
Greta has gained a powerful perspective at the young age that she exists to serve by organizing and harnessing the collective anguish of disillusioned youth around the world into making positive change happen for her generation and for generations to come, even if they have to shape adults into action to make it happen. 4 crucial questions to find purpose begins your path from servant leadership to Jedi leadership. What am I passionate about? What are my strengths? What can I be paid for? And what does the world need? At the intersection of these 4 questions, we find purpose. And once we find purpose, we need to identify how to make an impact. In 1999, Hal Elrod, a college sophomore, the talented sales rep, barely 20 years old, was in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. He had to be removed from the vehicle with the jaws of life, let out, and his heart stopped beating for 6 minutes. 6 days later, when he woke up from a coma, he faced the prospect of severe mental deficiency, brain damage, and possibly never walking again. And it was at this moment when most people would choose to be despondent, Hal chose gratitude. And because he did, and then put his gratitude into action, he went on to compete in ultra marathons, 50 miles or more, write several best-selling books, and become an international keynote speaker and success coach. But I'm not telling you Hal's story due to his significant successes. I'm telling you this because Hal's journey is illustrative of how to turn purpose into impact, from being at death's door
bringer of light to millions. Your purpose should humble you. It should be something so audacious and frightening, yet inspiring and energizing, that you approach it with the utmost respect. It should force you to exert a degree of will and personal commitment you never thought you had. And it should make you a far more empathetic human being and leader, realizing that for most people, purpose is extremely hard. And serving and supporting them is ultimately the mission of listening to their unique challenges, working to ensure high understanding, and validating what you've learned so you can truly help them. Hal's book, Miracle Morning, really helped me at a difficult time in my life. And his work has inspired millions of people around the world because it truly recognizes the struggles that we all have in getting out of our own way and in making real progress happen in our lives and in the lives of those we serve, our families, friends, colleagues, and community. Putting this concept into action requires each of us to first examine our mindset by asking, am I reactive, worried, and complaint-oriented? Or am I positive attitude and proactive action-oriented? Second, we need to take an inventory of our habits. Water intake, caloric quality and quantity, sleep quality and quantity, amount of daily reading for personal development, amount of regular meditation to calm and strengthen the mind, the amount of exercise to hone the body, and how regularly we visualize the life we want while being simultaneously grateful for the life that we have. Lastly, we need to hold ourselves accountable to the commitments we make related to these high-performance habits and proactive attitudes, and regularly track our progress. So hopefully you can see that enacting purpose takes relentless consistency that is fueled by a proactive mindset, positive and life-affirming habits, and taking personal accountability for remaining doggedly committed to the mission. This is what the most productive people know and do, that the rest of us glance at in favor of living unremarkable lives. So to make the shift towards purpose and greater impact, we truly have to exert our efforts on areas that really matter. The third question. And there's no just cause more appropriate for our times than working side by side to eradicate injustice, eliminate inequity, embrace diversity, and enhance inclusion. Much like the Rebel Alliance of Star Wars stood up to the tyranny of the Galactic Empire, the struggle for Jedi leaders mirrors the movies in that the toxic forces of ego-driven bosses are leading to a world where employees are disengaged, customers are taken for granted, communities are left behind, the environment is constantly damaged, and shareholders lack confidence in the fundamentals of their investments. In January of 2018, author, activist, and National Book Award winner Ibram X. Kendi went in for a colonoscopy to diagnose the source of bowel pain and rapid weight loss. That day, the author learned he had stage 4 colon cancer with a 5-year survival rate of 12%. He committed himself to surviving long enough to see his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, published. And with the love and support of his family and expertise of healthcare professionals, Kinsey not only completed the book, but has lived to see it be read by hundreds of thousands of people around the world and reach the top of the bestsellers lists. Most people can't even walk during chemotherapy, much less research and write for hours each day. Seeing this labor of love through took the combination of purpose, commitment, and a deep caring for the suffering of disenfranchised people due to the deeply rooted ills of racism. It took nearly everything he had. But when the mission is that crucial and the potential impact is so great, we go to extreme lengths to see it through. And that's what it takes to live as a Jedi leader. It requires a great deal of commitment to see through the goals of Jedi leadership. But first, we have to understand what each leader really needs. Justice means dismantling barriers to resources and opportunities in an organization so that all key stakeholders can live a full and dignified life. Equity can be defined as eliminating privilege and allocating resources to ensure all key stakeholders have access to the same opportunities. Diversity deals with capitalizing on the differences between us to drive innovation and consistent high performance. And inclusion is all about fostering a sense of belonging by centering, valuing, and amplifying the voices, perspectives, and styles of those who experience more barriers based on their identities. Dismantling barriers, eliminating privilege, creating opportunities, capitalizing on differences, and amplifying voices. Jedi leadership is not an easy job. But as servant leaders, we've chosen a purpose linked to serving and supporting others. When we combine this with the right mindset, habits, and commitment, we realize that to serve and support our people, we have to start asking the right question. Like, what are the injustices happening here that we need to eradicate? What are the inequities we need to eliminate? To what degree is diversity valued, promoted, and encouraged in all its facets, not just obvious diversity? How do we know everyone feels a sense of inclusion and belonging? Well, by leaning into the servant leadership attributes of being humble enough to acknowledge these issues actually exist, willful enough to commit to change, and empathetic enough to go beyond the surface issues and dig for root causes. Your Jedi leadership sets the stage for a radical transformation in how people are treated, which will manifest amazing benefits for the home, community, and business you are in. MLK Jr., Greta Thunberg, Hal Elrod, Ibram X. Kendi, and each of us. We are regular people possessed of enormous potential if we choose to wield it in the right way. This is about what we value most, personal gain or more gains for more stakeholders. MLK Jr. knew that the journey to the proverbial mountaintop would not only benefit African Americans, but it would create a better society as well. He believed in eliminating the triple evils of racism, poverty, and war in order for us to realize the true potential of a modern society. Imagine a world where every race is truly seen as equal. Everyone has enough food, clothing, shelter, and security. And the tragedy of war no longer exists. He died because he wanted the best for all of us. It's high time to start demanding the same for ourselves. I, like many of you, haven't faced a deep question like Greta Thunberg, had my life wrenched from my hand like Hal Elrod, or faced down a deadly cancer while writing my masterwork like Ibram X. Kendi. My story is far simpler. I'm just a black man from Pittsburgh who was fortunate enough to discover my purpose early on in life, and I've been able to live that purpose for the majority of my adult life. From taking part in an orchestra and team sports like basketball at an early age made me value teams. Working in corporations for leaders who focused on what my strengths and what was right with me versus trying to harp on my weaknesses really built me up. Because I was insatiably curious about leadership, I read every business book I could get my hands on. And when I finally got my chance to lead my own team, I chose positive psychology, strengths, and servant leadership as my brand, because that's what I've experienced from my own upbringing, from my managers and leaders, and from the senior-most stakeholders of my companies. Now, I achieved a lot of success with this approach, so I doubled down as I moved around the world, from the Middle East to Asia to Latin America, and saw that it was just as relevant and needed in different cultures as it was here in the US. And as a servant leader, I was driven to share my experience, and so I wrote my first leadership book, Leaderboard, the DNA of High Performance Teams, back in 2019. And then Servant Leaders Manifesto, which I've heard some of you have read in April of last year. But after experiencing the terrible inequities of the pandemic, the social justice protests surrounding George Floyd's murder, as well as the tragic murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and so many more, coupled with a revised intention by many corporations to do more for employees, communities, customers, and the environment, shareholders, I knew I couldn't stay silent. Because my deep purpose is to empower and inspire people to live their best lives by embracing servant leadership principles. I had to do more. And the more I thought about the goals of stakeholder capitalism, and the more I learned about the principles of Jedi work, the more I realized that there was a clear connection between them. You can't accomplish one without the other. And that's why I wrote, Be a Jedi Leader, Not a Boss. And that's why I'm here speaking with you all today. So why do I serve? To empower and inspire people to live their best lives by embracing servant leadership principles. How do I leave a positive legacy? By being an example of successful servant leadership and inspiring others with my talents of writing, speaking, coaching, consulting, training, and leading. And what do I really care enough about to give my all? Eliminating injustices, eradicating inequities, expanding diversity, and enhancing inclusion for all. Servant leadership and Jedi leadership only sound crazy until you start seeing the real-life impacts on people's happiness, engagement, and productivity. Working towards the achievement of higher purpose, using all of our innovation, creativity, work ethic, and passion, not only to make money, but to make greater meaning for our world and leave a legacy of eradicated injustices, dismantle inequities, maximize diversity, and greater inclusion is a reason for each of us to get out of bed each day and bring our best selves to our families, communities, and workplaces. Now, I realize that I'm preaching to the choir here, talking to you graduating leaders of the LHA, because each of you has chosen the path of servant leadership. My challenge to you is bigger than it would be for a normal audience. Hopefully, you all agree that the goals of Jedi leadership matter, and servant leaders are uniquely positioned to deliver on them. We need to be the examples for everyone else that caring for others is not weakness, and that focusing outside of ourselves is not a waste of time. We need to demonstrate that our brand of leadership delivers just as many results as other styles, just as MLK proved that leading with love can ultimately conquer hate. We ask ourselves 3 questions. Why do I serve? How do I leave a positive legacy? And what do I really care about enough to give my all? By doing so, we can become more than leaders. We can become beacons, showing the way for those who need it most. So please join me again. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. No, it's about we. And together, we can change the world. Thank you.
And I just want to leave you with one final thought as we conclude today. It's about reflections. There are 2 ways of spreading light. Be the candle or be the mirror that reflects it. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.